So I thought it would be useful for us to have a just disregard that. But Glenn Anderson, who was a very talented filmmaker and writer and narrator, he has shared his talents with this. So like let's start with that video, and then we can just have a little break discussion after that.
Jody, you need to switch the table.
So, where are the funds to meet those costs come from? Those are concerned about city finances. We spend the most on. Where do the funds to meet those costs come from? Are there ways to bring in more money or to make the dollars we do have stretch further? In this video, we'll look at each of these questions. First, what are the city's biggest expenditures? Our budget's extensive. This year's totals a little over $2.2 million. But out of everything we spend our tax dollars on, a few items consistently rise to the top. First, roads. This year, we'll be spending over $475,000 just to maintain the roads we already have. That doesn't count roads in town that still need to be completed. And snow removal is part of that budget too, which adds another $180,000 in costs. That's $655,000. Then we have public safety. That includes our fire department, police, and emergency medical services, which total over $402,000. Salaries, wages, social security, and retirement for our administrative employees come to another $260,000 plus. What about water? Well, water services will cost us about $1 million this year, but we won't count that here because we don't pay for water with tax dollars. Water services are self-sustaining, funded by payments from our water bills. Finally, for the last couple of years or so, legal costs have been a major expense, mostly because of action brought against the city by one specific resident. We budgeted $150,000 for legal expenses this year alone, but that resident recently moved from the city, and our attorneys are hopeful the litigation will be resolved soon. So we won't count that here either. These things then are what we generally spend the most on. This year, around $1,317,000. Now, where do we get the money to meet those expenses? Mostly from three different taxes. The first is tax. We each pay our tax through the county. The state collects the money, and then the state gives the city its allotment. This year, we're slated to get a little over $857,000 from property taxes. Unfortunately, this is a pretty small percentage of all the property tax you and I pay. Remember that pie chart on our 2022 tax notice? This is the amount that goes to the city, about 27%. Now, Woodland Hills faces kind of a unique problem with property taxes. Most of our residential building lots are quite a bit larger than the average lot in, say, Orem or Provo. That means we have fewer lots per square mile, and in turn, fewer residents paying taxes. So we each have to pay a bit more. But most of us like the breathing space larger lots give us here, so we feel like it's worth the trade-off. The second tax we get revenue from is the state gasoline tax. Those monies are called Class C road funds, and we use them for our road costs. How much do we get? Well, all the gasoline tax dollars go into a statewide fund. Then the state divvies the money out to each city according to how many miles of road the city has. Now, in Woodland Hills, we have a little over 13 miles of road. This year, that'll give us about $100,000 in gas tax revenues. But remember, our total road costs this year are about $655,000. So most of that will have to come from property and other taxes. The last tax bringing in revenue is sales tax. Woodland Hills has kind of a unique problem here too, because we have very little business in town. Here's how it works. When sales tax is generated by a business located in a town, Payson for instance, that town gets the lion's share of the tax, around 50%. Another chunk goes into a statewide sales tax pool. And because we have little or no commercial activity here, any sales tax revenue we get has to come out of that pool. Those funds are distributed by population, and we're a little town, so we get just a tiny fraction of those funds. This year, about $260,000. We could get more if we allowed more commercial activity in Woodland Hills, but traditionally we've preferred not to do that. Finally, our third question, are there things we can do to generate more revenue? Well, let's look at 5 possibilities. First, we could allow denser housing in Woodland Hills to boost property tax revenue. We're already doing some of that, like in the Four Seasons subdivision at the base of Summit Creek Drive. Second, we could allow commercial activity in Woodland Hills that would boost sales tax revenue. Although it's been challenging because not every business is the right fit, the city has been looking into this possibility. Third, we've had some success applying for grants from various sources, including the state and federal government. For example, our fire chief applied for a grant for $120,000 to replace the department's breathing tanks because their warranties expired. The catch with grants is that they can require the city to kick in matching funds. The chief's grant only required about 8%, and that was well worth it. We just have to know the terms of the grant and be careful we don't commit to spending money we don't have. Fourth, the city is looking into a roads fee. How can a new fee be a good idea? Well, some other cities in Utah County are already doing this because it allows residents to put more of their own tax money to work where they live. Remember, we spend a big chunk of our property tax money on our roads, but the city only gets about 27% of that money back after we pay it. On the other hand, if we collected a city fee to help maintain our roads, we could keep 100% of that money in Woodland Hills. Look for more information on this in coming months. Finally, we can all help boost our sales tax revenues by purchasing more items online. This is because, as we said before, the city gets to keep more of its sales tax if a purchase is made in that city. And the point of sale for online purchases in Woodland Hills is Woodland Hills. Now, wouldn't it be nice if it were just that simple? But as is usually the case with tax regulations, so here are some of the catches. If my online purchase is shipped from out of state, Woodland Hills gets the lion's share of the sales tax, like we said, around 50%. But if it's shipped from a city in Utah, that city gets the 50%. It's the same with Amazon. If my purchase is shipped from the fulfillment center in Las Vegas, we get 50%. But if it comes from a fulfillment center in Salt Lake or Lehigh, they get the 50%. Yes, that's aggravating, and no, it's not fair, but that's the rule. Car sales are one of the biggest sales tax generators, and cars have some additional rules. If I buy a car from a dealer in Utah, the city where the dealer is located gets the 50%. The same with buying a car online from Carvana, for example. The city where the Carvana lot is located gets the 50%. But if I buy my car from a private party, Woodland Hills gets the 50%. If, there's a big if I register the car in Woodland Hills. That means my home address has to be on the registration. If I were to buy the car for my business, for example, which is located in Provo, and that address is on the registration, then Provo gets the lion's share of the sales tax. So with all of these technicalities, can we still make a difference in city revenue by buying things online? Well, it depends. But all things considered, we're more likely to get a benefit buying something online from, say, Home Depot or Amazon than we are running down to the Walmart in Spanish Fork. So the city encourages us to buy online when we can. So that's a quick look at Woodland Hills revenue and how it works. Not all there is to know, but some of the main points. And hopefully this gives us a little more insight into our city finances.
All right. I again just want to thank Glenn and Chris Ellie for providing that information that we like. And just by way of explanation, so what I had been under the assumption of is that if we did the roads fee, that we would be able to keep 100% of that as opposed to it being just a 27%. But that was a wrong assumption. So, but that notwithstanding, one of the things that I do think that we can do as residents that can have a meaningful impact is to take those other steps that were spoken of in that video. I mean, if we're going to make a purchase, and we make it online. We have not been able to determine if there's any way that you can specifically target a fulfillment center. If anybody knows, please let us know. We are trying to provide some practical advice as to some steps that each of us can do to increase those bottom lines. And then with respect to cars, a number of residents have businesses that are not located in Woodland Hills, and there could be a meaningful difference made if you were to register those cars within the city as opposed to suburbs. So I do believe that in my experience over the past several months, I think that we do a good job managing a very lean budget. There are some infrastructure things that just cost a lot of money, the roads being one of them. And that is a real challenge. But Woodland Hills, because of the nature of its layout, because of the nature of what we all really have come to love about the city, does make it a uniquely expensive place to live too. But anyway, thanks for your attention on that. And I will turn some time over to Ben, and then we'll just move her down this road and hear from each council member.
So when I'm bring this up. Sorry, Mayor. Nope, I will hold it. Try it again. I don't know if I'm that talented. I did. It should be okay for today. Yeah, we'll just hold it. That's fine. I don't really have too much, but I did want to just, over this past year or so, as we've been here with the city, for us new to the council and the mayor, I just want to have a big thank you to each of you. It is a joy serving the residents of Woodland Hills. I especially want to thank our wonderful staff. It's been fascinating for me. The more and more I'm aware of what goes on a day-to-day basis, the sacrifices that are made from family, from vacations, from the myriad of different things that we're pulled away from. Many that are volunteers, and then those that are paid. They do a lot of work. And so I just want to say thank you to them. A big thank you also to the snowplow drivers this year. It's been a fun ride. As we've been having snow, it feels like every single day, though it hasn't been, but it has been a lot. And it's been one of my privileges this season to also join them in those ranks, but it's the guys that are up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. that are the real heroes. So, but I just wanted to express that gratitude to you guys, and then also our volunteer staff. So
Do you know the numbers?
Well, I don't have the updated numbers. I know recently we had, it was 61 snow incidents.
62 days that we plowed.
62 days that we plowed. We've had over 100 inches here at the
188.
station.
188.
Okay, I'm clearly just not knowing what's going on. And then I know if my department had what, 200 or something along the line. In essence, it's a lot, and I just move it. I don't count it. So.
Oh, it's so great to see all of you. We don't get to see each other very often, only at a few community events, or sometimes it's, that the church events or other types of things, maybe meeting other places. Anyways, it's great to be here. Thank you so much. And I echo what Councilman Hilliard said. I really appreciate our. Why did you screw this in? Oh, yeah, it's not moving.
You gotta be strong, like, bro.
Yeah, who put it up to begin with? You broke it. Okay. New equipment is needed for our twice a year use of this. Okay. Okay. But I also want to thank the residents who volunteer countless hours to help us run our city. It's important whether it's fire department or emergency management or snowplow or all of the Woodland Hills Day, everything else that goes on, and of course, echo also, thank you to our staff. They really go out over and above in serving our city because they love our city. And so I wanted to say that I have written out some of my remarks because I over three different areas of the city that people ask me about all the time. We have recently formed an emergency management department, which I am emergency manager for the city. And then I'm also over communication and community development. I will just be focusing tonight on emergency management because a lot of questions come from there. As you can see, we have a little table put back here that we would like you to visit if you haven't already, to sign up and to kind of showcase what we're working on, starting a brand new department in our city. I want to focus first on avalanche. Yes, we've had several avalanches this year. Those are things that we have every year up on the mountain. They don't always come into our city boundaries, but we have them. I have a variety of people who go up several times a week and give me reports on avalanche danger. And so I wanted to read this. We've had several avalanches on the mountain this year, some crossing the Switchback Trail. This is a normal yearly occurrence. We monitor them weekly to determine the level of threat to our community. As of this morning, there is no new movement from the main debris field, but there have been numerous smaller slides before and after the chute, especially on the southwest aspects. Anyone wanting to go up the mountain, even on the trail, should be checking the Utah Avalanche Center website every morning before deciding to go up, especially in light of the new atmospheric river headed this way. We get a lot of different wind and, as we know, new snow. Conditions in the morning are very different than the afternoon as temperatures increase throughout the day. As a warning, other people have tracked out onto unstable cornices. There is no stable soil underneath those cornices. It's just more wind-blown snow. This could break off with no warning, which means following these tracks could have negative consequences. Please be mindful of the conditions. And if you go up, stay on the trail. With regards to flooding, we've had quite a bit of media exposure around the state with regards to flooding. We are grateful for additional moisture, all of the additional moisture we've received. We all pray for that. Although it appears to be more than normal, it is actually consistent with yearly totals prior to the statewide drought. With that said, there's considerable attention to possible flooding, and we're very mindful of your concerns. Historically, Woodland Hills has not had citywide flooding. If flooding has occurred, it's usually localized or nuisance flooding, which means in your basements, in your window wells, or natural pools of water where your landscaping is a little lower than others. But I meet weekly with the county or other specialists to gather information and so that we can make necessary preparations. On Thursday, our Public Works Director, Corbett, and I will be meeting with Glenn Merrill, a hydrologist with the National Weather Service, to discuss any possible risks we may have so that we can make additional preparations. The EM department has made an initial plan to address this need, which includes sandbags. Those of you who were here after the fire helped us fill a lot of sandbags. This is a little bit different. At that time, we were more concerned with mud flow and debris flow than we were flooding. And so the sandbags that we would need now would be different than what we used then. So a typical sandbag is filled with 45 to 50 pounds of sand. 2,000 pounds of sand equals 1 ton of sand, which is how sand is sold by the ton. 1 ton of sand will fill 40 to 45 bags. Commercial delivery dump trucks are filled with sand based on cubic yards. You really have to know a lot of math to be able to order sand. 1 cubic yard will fill 100 sandbags. We will need approximately 100 cubic yards of sand delivered. The estimated cost for that is somewhere between $3,000 and $4,000 because sand is based on ton, which is weight. Sand right now is wet, so it weighs more than in the summer. The bags are 25 cents each, and for our estimated needs, we estimated 10,000 bags, which is approximately 20 bags per home in Woodland Hills. This would be additional $4,000. If by purchasing the bags now, we have purchased the bags now, and we will order the sand when needed. So the cost to residents of this service will be about $1 a bag, or $20 for your 20 allotment. Some of you will need bags, some of you will not. As it gets closer, additional information on community filling of those bags and also placement of those bags will be given as we keep monitoring the conditions. There is, as I said, not all of you will need sandbags, but some of you will. And there are places that our Public Works Department has designated that may be needed to protect city infrastructure or certain roadways, certain intersections, certain slopes, etc. We do have this new emergency management department that we've divided into two sections. One is preparedness and one is neighborhood watch. Erin is right there, and Spencer, would you both please stand? Erin Gilbert is our specialist on preparedness, and Spencer Wells is our specialist on neighborhood watch. We are needing volunteers. We have a survey that's over there, and Erin and Spencer can direct you to the survey so that you can become part of this volunteer effort. We meet the first Tuesday of every month right here in the city center if you want to volunteer. If you have questions, make sure to call me or just ask me. And again, we really appreciate the council forming this new department. There are other aspects to our emergencies other than just fire, and our fire does an amazing job there, but there are some other things. And so thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for being engaged in the safety and health of our community.
Hi, my name is David Pratt, and I'm responsible for taping microphone stands and making sure that they stay up. I also work with the Public Works and the water, specifically with that, and then also I work with our Planning Commission. So the goal of both of those is to make sure, one, we have enough water and that it tastes really good, and I think we're doing very, very well on that. And I, again, just want to recognize specifically Corbett for all of his work with our water. And then our Planning Commission, which I've often said, the goal of the Planning Commission is to make a city look like it was planned from the get-go when it wasn't. And that's what the Planning Commission gets to deal with. And so that ends up being a lot of very difficult decisions where they have to kind of say, okay, yeah, that fits, that doesn't fit. What are we going to do here? And that's what the Planning Commission does. They also help us a lot with researching things at a much deeper level than what the council has time to do, and coming up with ordinances and kind of keeping us on track and handling all of the things that the state throws our way at the end of every legislative session as they make law changes and so forth. So anyways, I thought about tonight, I just wanted to very quickly recognize two other groups. So the first group I want to recognize are all of the new residents. So people who have moved into Woodland Hills in the last 2 years or so. And what I wanted to do is just say, welcome. We hope that you feel a part of Woodland Hills and you feel this, the feeling that you get as you're looking up at the mountain, or as you're watching the snow come down, or as you're watching turkeys go across your yard, or the deer eating all of your plants and garden. You know, whatever it is that makes Woodland Hills, we hope you get to feel a part of that. And then the second group that I want to recognize are what I'm going to call the old timers. The people who have been here and who literally built the feeling that we all get to participate in now. The thing that I loved about Woodland Hills when I first moved up here, and you might ask yourself the question, why in the world do we plow our own snow? Well, the answer is, it goes back to those old timers. When we first moved in, it was Dennis Terry that was plowing the snow every single time we had a snowstorm. Whether the fire department with the volunteer fire crews that they put together, we would all load all of our wood and we'd go create a huge bonfire down by the mailboxes. And it was just that can-do small town atmosphere that became Woodland Hills. And so I credit the old timers for building that kind of a culture. And that's what we get to now carry on. And so, yes, Woodland Hills is not Provo, thank goodness. We are not Spanish Fork, thank goodness. I'm grateful that they exist. I need to shop there, but I like coming home to Woodland Hills. So, thank you.
Well, I'm Janet Lunt, and I don't have a lot for you, but I am over a few things. One of the committees that I serve on is the Parks and Trails, and we kind of have some little subcommittees that are under that. So it's a lot of fun. One of the upcoming events that we have, I'm sure you guys have seen, we have the Big Tooth Maple Festival. Did you guys know you can make maple syrup from your trees? So April 15th, at Lawrence and Field, right? Anything you want to add to that? I mean, I'm giving you a plug here.
Just be there.
Okay, it'll be lots of fun. We're gonna learn how to do it.
Yesterday was our first 100-gallon day. We produced 100 gallons of sack. Now that only equates to about 2.5 gallons of syrup. But it started for us.
And a lot of sugar. We're gonna need a lot of sugar, right, for all of that? So it'll be good to learn. I actually have the kit and I've never done the tapping, so I'm gonna be there so I can learn about it. Some other things that I'm also over volunteers and I'm over all of the city events. And I just, with all three of those, there's been a lot of times where we've needed people to come and do some hard labor, do some work on the trail. We put a bench up at the very top to honor one of our city members. And you guys have always, sometimes I have to call people directly because I'll try to put a plea out there just for regular volunteers. And I always get people that offer and volunteer. And I'm just so grateful. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to tell you guys thank you for always helping, because I can't do it all by myself, especially not right now. I got a broken wing going on, but I'm super grateful for all the volunteers that we have for all of the events and all the things like that. And every time we try to do anything, like when Santa comes to town and we ride around on the fire truck, I don't even have to ask for donations for candy. People reach out to me and say, can I help buy the candy? Can I help, what can I help with? And so I'm really grateful for that. So we really do have the cream of the crop here. One other committee that I do serve on is the finance committee. And the biggest thing that we have to do is work on the city budget. And I just want you to know, sometimes people think that we just do things willy-nilly, but we really don't. We really labor over the budget. And we only have, you can tell from the video, we only have a limited amount of money. And sometimes we're trying to figure out how we're gonna move it from one place to the other or cover. We had to get 2 extra loads of salt this winter because of all the snow. And it was always like, well, where do we find that money for that salt? But we find a way. Luckily, we do have always a little bit of a reserve. So just grateful to all the citizens for all your support, and keep supporting us, keep supporting our great events, and always volunteer because we always need your help. So thank you.
Let me start by saying that it's a real joy to work with the people you see in front of you. They are certainly striving to do their 100% best. That includes the mayor and all the councils that I work with. I really appreciate them. I wish each of you could enjoy the moment I'm experiencing right now, standing in front of the city and trying to justify my election. It is so stressful. But I do have a lot to report on, because this is a great place to live and we have some great people, and that's what I want to tell you about. We are expecting the arrival of a new fire truck sometime between May and July coming up here this spring. So that is the culmination of more than 2.5 years of planning and building and researching, and a lot of people took part in that, including our finance committee, and the council, and the fire department leaders. So we're looking forward to that truck. It is a perfectly built truck for our city. It's I won't bore you with the details, but it's a truck that does wildland fire and residential fire, and we need that. It also can put water out of it while it's moving, and that's an important aspect of our community. We sometimes need to spray and we go, you know. Our current engine, cool. Our current engine, which I love, is you have to park it to pump water. So anyway, the new truck is going to be very helpful. And our other truck, our current newest one, is about 15 years old. So this is very timely. The other good news is it won't raise your taxes. That we are already budgeted for this truck, and so that's a very positive thing. We will be having a chipping program again this spring. We might do it before the snow melts. Is that okay with everybody? I heard that the helpers that do that want to move it earlier, so I think we need to delay them a little bit this year so you can get some out to the street. So that's in the plans. And I want to talk to you about one of my favorite assignments on the city council. I get to go to a monthly 911 dispatch board meeting, and our city has a board member. I'm representing our city as a board member of that committee. I don't know if you know what happens when you call 911, but it is amazing. Each city contracts, and I won't be boring, I'll be cool. Each city contracts with a dispatch center to dispatch their 911 calls. So we are lucky, we are part of Central Dispatch that's located in Spanish Fort, and many of the cities in Utah County, the smaller ones especially, are all tied to that. Spanish Fort is tied to it. Now Springville has their own, Provo has their own. There's a few other cities that have their own dispatch centers. So when you're cruising around in wherever you are, and you call 911, you can't imagine the circus that call goes through to find out who to dispatch. It's got to find the right center that will dispatch the aid to where you are. And so imagine if you're on a border of Springville and Spanish Fort, and you call 911, it goes through a circus of logic and then calls the wrong dispatch center. Well, what they worry about down there is when you call 911, you are not to be hung up on, and you're not to repeat anything that you've already told them. So all of this stuff happens automatically under the covers so that you don't get delayed and the right people are dispatched. And so I appreciate all of the parts of that wheel that make that happen correctly. Did you know that you can text 911? Anybody know that?
I've done it.
I've done it. Well, that's a greatly underused feature of 911. We asked the lady in charge down there, how many of those texts do you get a month? She says, in Utah County, we get about an average of 23 a month of texts. Now, that's not very many. So we need to remember that. It's a valuable thing to think of, especially you ladies out there. If you're in a predicament where you can't call and talk out loud, you can text 911. And that starts a whole pile of things going on at dispatch that gets you the help you need. They can do a lot of things. They can dim your phone. They can make it easy for anyone calling 911 to be more secretive about it when it's necessary. And I think that's a really great feature. Now they're coming up July 1, and I'm speaking about all this because we pay for their service, and I think it's really justified. Coming July 1, they're starting a new system where when you call 911, the dispatcher may say to you, hey, turn on your video, or they'll turn it on for you, and you can point at the problem. That video goes to dispatch. It is then sent to the fire or police leaders that need to know about that incident, and they'll see what you're seeing. And that's a whole lot better than descriptions we get over the phone, or we hear as responders. It's rarely how it's paged out, but that video will really help the fire chief when he's on the way to a house fire. if he could see before he gets there what it's about. Or imagine you're hiding in a closet and you need help. You go out of the closet and point your phone at the problem and say, this is what I'm facing. And it just gives great documentation. That system is going into place, and it'll take a little time to get it built up, but it's going in place this July. So I'm pretty excited about that. Okay, I just want to mention that our fire department is thriving still. And I say still because it takes volunteers. Much has been said about volunteers tonight, and that's a huge asset in our city. I don't know if you know this, but we have members of our fire department. You have snowplow drivers that are millionaires. They're not doing it for the money. Isn't that cool? They are only doing it for one reason, and that's for service. I think that's commendable. And I've never been a millionaire. Isn't anybody here, but it's amazing. Sorry, yeah, except the mayor. I don't know. I don't know if you know that, but people in our city serve not because they want to get paid, but because they care about somebody else. I see our medical people go out 24 hours a day, every day of the year, and they serve somebody, and it just always, it melts me. I don't know how else to say it.
What about our full-time planners?
Well, that's another amazing volunteer. If you don't know Wayne does everything for free, you know, we all need to slap him once. I think he's one of the best youth asset to our city. Well, so I saw the other day, we had 3 medical calls in less than 24 hours. We had one in the middle of the day, one in the middle of the night, and one in the morning. So and these guys all show up. You know, it's just so impressive. I appreciate the leaders of our fire department, what they do. They devote 100% of their time to that. We are getting a lot of medical calls. Our team's committed. We're improving our services. We just have accessed and decided on a set of training software that we can bring new members up to speed quicker with some apps and some web access for training, because you got a lot to learn, you know, when you start in the fire department. I want to commend, I'm jumping around, but I want to commend the water department for that great letter we got. It is so good that we have clean, pure water that we can drink and feel safe about. The other aspect of that water thing that we enjoy is there's a lot of it. And you know, we have high water flows in our city. If we need to put a lot of water on a big house, it's there if we need to use it. That's a huge, and that's not every city's situation. So we're lucky to have the flows that we do for the size of homes that we do, and can answer those calls for fire. I also appreciate the finance committee in our city. They spend a lot of time looking at every expense that we propose that we consider, and they're really good at giving us feedback. I appreciate a lot of things in our city, and mainly I appreciate, and I'm really impressed with all of you that showed up tonight. That's really incredible. It tells us a lot that you care about what's going on in the city that you live in. And I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you.
All right, well, this is your meeting, so Jody, we only have one mic, right? So if you want to ask any of the council members or myself a question or have a comment, please step up and you'd be happy to hear from you. and try to answer the question. Please, you have to speak into the microphone though, because we got to record.
I have a loud voice.
Before we can't hear you.
I could turn the microphone, but it would be best if it would come up. And I'm sorry to put you in that position.
Or we can,
Actually, let's
we
do
can
this.
travel it.
We'll do this like old school, fast testimony.
I just wanted to know who determines where the sales tax, who determines whether the city gets it or not? And how is that determined?
I can answer that. So the state legislature determines that, and basically, as was pointed out in the video, it would be ideal if, when making an online purchase, if you could identify the origin point of the sale, but oftentimes that's behind the curtain, and so, but it's a legislative effort that allowed us to get that 50% point of sale sales tax revenue. But it would be ideal as if, in my opinion, if there was something that if you order in Willie Mills gets that revenue, but as we dug deeper, because candidly, I was hoping that we could use like the Christmas shopping season to try to really leverage this sales tax advantage and say, okay, we're gonna be doing a lot of shopping October to December. Let's do it online. Let's get ourselves some real cash from it. But as we dug deeper, Chris Helvey, he spoke with the Utah Tax Commission, and it was just more complicated than we had envisioned. And that's regrettable, but it is something that is done through legislation.
So when we order something, it's automatically checked by the state.
There's software that's involved in it. It's determined from point of sale to you, and then delivery comes in. So a lot of times you'll see where it says tax collected, and that on your purchase, and that's where it determines who gets that.
And I don't know the exact specifics of how that is quantified, because, I mean, even adding sales tax to online purchases is a relatively new animal. And so it's something that I would assume they would have to submit filings to the tax commission to identify what those sales are. Because it's something it's accumulated and then it's divvied up, after they make that big pile of money.
I know my wife just ordered a bunch of art supplies from out of state. Will that automatically tax go to Woodville?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're hoping for. And again, the idea is if we can do this with little impact, I mean, these are things that we're already doing. And so if we can make those online purchases, I mean, you're not only saving gas and mileage on the roads, but you are at least improving the likelihood that we will get some added benefit in revenues. Thanks for that. Yeah, please come on.
Along the line, same lines, I was just curious, let's say I purchased something from Lowe's and I had it shipped to my house, would that go to the city or is that the Spanish Fork?
If you buy it from the Spanish Fork Lowe's, it will go to Spanish Fork.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's the trick, right? It's the origin of where it ships from. All right, yeah. All right, you guys gotta do better. This is as far as.
You mentioned before the video to ignore the road fee, because things have changed. Are you at liberty to talk about what's changed and what you're ignoring?
Yeah, I found out 80 minutes before tonight's meeting that was wrong. And so it was just an incorrect assumption, because I had hoped, because Pleasant Grove was just recently in a legal dispute over a road fee. And I have been following it very closely in our conversations, because in my mind, it was something where, man, if we could get 100% of those revenues as opposed to just getting a piece of the pie through property tax. But when we do raise property taxes, that actually 100% of that goes to the city. So in my mind, a roads fee would be no different than just what we would be able to generate through property taxes. So it was just a wrong assumption on my part, but it's still an expensive piece of infrastructure that we need to maintain. So that's something that we like. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. Mabel, sir.
Not so much a question as a comment. I've lived here in Woodland Hills for 5 years and within 20 years prior to that, all over the country. And I've noticed one thing about Woodland Hills that's unlike any other place I've ever lived. And that is people are here for a reason. And it's not because it's close to schools or shopping or work or affordable housing. They're here because they love it. As Dave alluded to, there's just something, there's a quality of life here, whether it's the outdoors or the turkeys or the deer or whatever, that draws people to Woodland Hills. So we hear a lot about taxes, and so I saw a list of all the cities in Utah ranked by by their tax rate. And Woodlands Hills was near the top. But then I looked at the cities at the bottom, and I don't want to live there. I'm sure there's some real sweet people in Roosevelt. or in Vermont. So, but I'm willing to pay the taxes to obtain the quality of life that we have here. And my comment is, I think you guys do a great job. You got a lot of tough issues to balance, but if it comes down to deciding quality of life, or maybe you pay a little bit more, go with quality of life, and I think pay a little bit less. Go with the quality of life, and you'll have the rest of us.
Thank you. That's a great comment, and I concur with what you said. And I can tell you that as far as how the city itself is managed, if you were to just take a look at the council chairs at Pulling Park, we have the most austere council room that I have encountered in visiting a variety of council rooms. So we try to stretch our dollars here for sure.
I was in Elbridge just today, and it's a lot nicer.
Yeah. So we try to do what we can.
All right, so Doral, you brought up water quality. I heard a report from somebody that said that although everybody thinks that they have a unique water supply in their city, because that's where their wells are coming from, or the pipeline, somebody told me that all of Utah Valley is one massive aquifer, except there's this massive fault line that separates Woodland Hills from the rest of Utah County. And Woodland Hills is on a completely different aquifer than the rest of the valley. Can you confirm or deny that?
My man.
Where's Corbin?
Where's Corbett? Corbett, I.
Tell us the truth, Corbin.
The aquifer is the same, it's just interrupted by the fault. So if you have an aquifer that's traveling, then you have a fault, and that fault has separated the aquifer. It's interrupted the aquifer, so the water comes, and then it works its way through the fault, and it stays in the same aquifer. So our aquifer is in the same aquifer as the Maple Canyon well. The Maple Canyon well is the one we share the same.
We're upstream.
Fresh.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right, anybody else? Jerry, come on, or stay seated.
My question's for Doral. Is there any difference in dialing 911 or dialing the sheriff's number?
Yes.
What's the difference?
Yes, the 911 is so triggered for emergency, you really want to dial 911 if you see something burning, you see somebody hurting, or other crises, and I think we all can tell the difference. If it's borderline, call 911. Dialing the sheriff's number will get the job done, excuse me?
Non-emergency.
Non-emergency number, it works, but that's where you call to report, a deer fell on the driveway, it needs looked at, or it's something, well, maybe not, just less emergency items. It's really important to call 911 for emergencies. The page goes out as soon as they answer the call. There, they notify us. Then we learn details along the way as you're on the phone explaining to them. Does that answer your question well enough? And I am so proud of our city being a part of that dispatch. They are looked up on by every other dispatch in Utah because they have the expertise on Spillman, the software that we use for running this system. They have experts in our dispatch center that Provo calls, Springville calls, others agency calls, and now they're gonna start billing for that service of their knowledge, but you can be proud of those people down there, and they train to do it under a budget with a really critical board too. The board of directors consists of a member from each city that they serve. I think there's like 15, 16 cities that are on that. Thanks, Sharon.
Yeah, I just want to throw something out there as well. We haven't mentioned our sheriff tonight, and we really kind of ought to. So recently, Deputy Dutson allowed city council members to come on a ride along with him, which was really, really fun. I got to watch as some of you got pulled over.
He set a trap for me. But I was going 500.
But we do not have a full-time police officer up here. We contract with the sheriff, we contract for a certain number of hours. I will say for the amount of money that we contract, we get great service. The other thing that has happened recently, which was kind of one of those no duh moments, is we actually, the sheriff could not write tickets within our city because we didn't have our ordinances written in such a way that they could actually ticket anybody against it. And so the sheriff was the one who brought that to us and helped us kind of adjust that so that now we can actually, when somebody's parked on the side of the road, when somebody's blocking the snow plows, when somebody's blocking a cul-de-sac. So
Lights of fire.
lighting fireworks, yeah. I mean, so what I'm trying to portray is that's the kind of relationship that we have with our sheriff and our sheriff's department, is it's a very collaborative one. They're trying to help us as a city. And we're not, well, not all of us are lawyers. And so we don't always know how we need to write ordinances in such a way that they're enforceable. And they're helping us do that. They're helping us with our speed signs. Some of you may not know, but those speed signs that you go by, they actually record all of the speeds as people go down. So even though you may not get a ticket, we do know how fast people are going down the hill. And so we're then able to say, okay, do we have a problem with speeding in this area? Yes or no? Now, we'd like to get a few more of those in certain areas, but that's the objective, is for us to actually use data rather than just, hey man, they look like they're going really fast. We got to set up a speed trap here. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is we want to have data that helps us understand what do we need to actually enforce and where.
What about an anecdotal poll? How many of you have seen the sign flash red that says too fast? Raise your hand.
Every day.
Oh.
All right, so those of you that raise your hand, you're the ones on the paper. However, feel lucky, it's not photocopied.
Except this meeting is being video recorded. So it is. All right, any other comments or questions? Yeah, please, and then we'll come to you.
The state is putting a lot of pressure on cities for higher density housing. And so it's a two-part question, really. One is, where are we? The second part is, what do you expect the impact to be on Woodland Hills Drive from all the development in Sylvan?
Well, in addition, one of my assignments is the liaison between our city and the governor and the legislature. So I spend a lot of time during the legislative session at the Capitol. And I also sit on the board for the League of Cities and Towns, which our city is a member of. There were several bills that came out this session dealing with exactly that, density, forced density. There were bills that said your general plan will have to be binding so that developers couldn't do a development agreement. There was a whole bunch of things that came out. We fought really hard and were able to get most of those bills to where we felt more comfortable with them. There is always possibility of change each legislative session. There are quite a few developers who are in the legislature right now and who obviously say, well, cities, you aren't letting us build. You aren't allowing us to have higher density. You're not allowing us, we have a housing shortage. But what we found is in the state overall, which is what the data that they were looking at, we had over 100,000 building permits in the last 2 years in our state. We have had more building permits in our state than any other state in the nation. So we are addressing our housing issue. But we say especially as Woodland Hills, we are in charge of our own city. Local control is very important. And don't come to us saying, you're gonna force us to do one thing or another. Now, as you grow in size, they have dictated certain buildings, allotments. And that is tied to road money, which we've heard about the road money. If you're a city of a certain size, which we're not even close to yet, then some mandatory zoning and density goes into place. But for us now, we are protected and we can go forward in the way that we feel is best for our city. And how the transportation funding is and how that might go in, we are also a member of what's called the Mountain Land Association of Government, which the mayor sits on that board, and they have a transportation plan, and they are continually updating that and looking at those transportation needs. We as a city don't have a say in what Salem does with their development, but the county still owns some of the roads, and they would have to upgrade. You can tell the upgraded project that is the Mount Loafer Parkway that will go from Elk Ridge to the freeway. That has begun to be another aspect of getting out of the area a little bit faster. Woodland Hills Drive will probably need to be widened as it is by the middle school. They're also looking at another possible extension that goes from the middle school out to Highway 6. So those are some potential new avenues of transportation.
And I was gonna say, that is, one of the objectives is they are trying to, because Spanish Fork is relatively unhappy with all of Salem and all of Woodland Hills, being funneled into its main street. And so they are, the last I heard was that access point connecting with Highway 6 is, I wish Jeremy Searle was here because he actually is a civil engineer and a transportation expert. But the last plans that I saw, and Wayne, actually, you might be able to offer some insight on that too. But the last I saw, that was the way they are really trying to steer the traffic. But I mean, don't take that to the bank, but that's the latest set of plans that I heard, is that it's not intended to go straight down Woodland Hills Drive, but it's intended to feed onto Highway 6. And then one other consideration is the former Davis property that maybe many, if not all of you know, that has been acquired. It's in Salem city limits, but they are going to be doing some high density stuff, and that's 1,300 units, I believe. And that's definitely going to be feeding into Woodland Hills Drive. So, I mean, it's we're not stopping it, but at least as far as the transportation is concerned. One of the things that I was deeply impressed with, actually, since being elected, is that there's a lot of forward thinking in terms of trying to make sure, government, we are known for being incompetent, but at the same time, I think that that was, in my mind, very impressive that, they're acquiring land. They are trying to make a long range plan for things such as that. All right. Wayne, do you have something to say?
So the video mentioned that the city's looking at commercial coming into the city. And so I have two parts to my question. Can you tell us what those might be, what they might look like? And second, will we as citizens have an opportunity to know about that in advance so we can weigh in on what kind of commercial comes in?
Oh, I will answer that. As part of community development, we wrote a grant and we were given some money to do community visioning and planning. And part of that is to look at aspects for potential revenue. But the caveat is that it's not just us saying, by the way, we think we should have this, this, and this. Again, any commercial entity that would come to the state would have to have a sales tax component to it to be viable in our city at all. But prior to that, we have space in our city to have maybe something different than what we currently have, especially on all that farmland. Up here on the mountain where we have trees, we have other space. Down there, where it's flatland, that is 1 or 2 acre parcels, there could be some fire danger to that. So we might want to consider something different. Now, as far as commercial then, with this grant on community visioning, what we're planning on doing is inviting all of you to focus groups, to small groups of citizens who can come together and tell us exactly what you think is important. What kind of zoning do you want? If you want any type of commercial, and if so, what would that be? There are people who come to us and say, oh, we would really like to have a convenience store, or we would really like an ice cream shop, or a gym, or whatever, right? We have the opportunity to consider those things. We are not considering those ourselves. We are going to bring each of you together with a professional consultant who will then gather information to give to the council. And we will come up with ideas for visioning and planning that may or may not have that in mind. We're just saying that that's a possibility, but it's nothing is set in stone. So, but you will all be invited to attend every meeting and every decision.
And let me also just add that, and I'll come back to you. See, I, as far as opinions, they're varied among us, and I mean, this is a representative government, so by all means, I mean, me personally, I actually would like to see a Harmons by the mailbox. But, and I know that there are others that share that sentiment, but I think that there are others that are vehemently opposed to it. So, but you know, if you have a point of view, then through these groups that Carrie has mentioned, or just through your elected representative, please make your positions known.
I will be doing that the next few months, once we start this.
Just a follow-up question to that, would residents, if residents are interested in starting a business in the city, would they, you know, like, would they have an opportunity to put their business forward as an option?
Well, we do issue business licenses, so there are businesses. I actually operate a law firm out of Woodland Hills, so there are businesses. I mean, it's not like I have clients coming in, but there are businesses in Woodland Hills, so it depends on the nature of your business. Let me also just say that, you know, I used to work with Taylor Woodbury, who is the CEO of Woodbury Corporation. And I invited him to come up here and just kind of give his assessment as a developer as to, you know, what kind of options we might have as a city. And I've come to the conclusion that cities cannot drive that type of development, that type of prosperity, if you want to look at it that way. All we can do is try to either stand in the way if it's not what we want, or clear the way if it's something that seems to be in our general, you know, sort of point of view.
Yeah, my question was more of, my question was more of one that because my wife and I run a couple of different online businesses. And so, but we've been looking at starting a brick and mortar business that we've been looking into for a while. I didn't even know it was an option here. So I was like, so we were looking at different properties in different areas. Anyway, so that's what I was curious about.
Okay,
I
yeah.
can address that one too. So currently, you can have a business out of your home, right? We have piano teachers, we have lawyers, we have artists, we have a lot of people who have businesses in their home. We haven't zoned commercial anywhere in the city. We have in our general plan, we have the option to do that in our general plan, but it hasn't become official yet. Now, any of the property that hasn't currently been zoned, which is a lot of that flat land, if the person who owns that property would want to petition the planning commission and then the council to rezone that to commercial, that's when it would be considered. But again, we are going to be having these focus groups be able to look at that to see, do we want to ask those private property owners to upgrade from, we think we could have some potential zoning there, to, would you like us to zone it commercial based on what the residents say? Now, one of the reasons that we talk about this is, again, as you saw from the video, 100% of property tax from a business goes to the city, where we only get the 27% from you. And so that's why Spanish Fork put in a Costco. Because once they had a successful Costco, they were able to get 1 million square feet of other retail. Spanish Fork is sitting pretty good with some money right now, and they get all of our business. So not that we are looking to put in commercial, but we're giving you the option to give us your viewpoint. We still want to maintain our quality of life no matter what we have. We all agree with David's statement. We moved here for a reason, and we love that reason. Right now, if Salem decided to put in commercial across the street on 11200, they could put a whole strip mall there, and there's nothing we could do about it, and they would get all the tax because you would all shop there, right? So we need to make sure that we're thoughtful and mindful of what maintains our quality of life, but what might ease our tax burden as well. And so that's why we're going to have these focus groups, so that we can really look at all of the reality of the situation and that you would be able to give your input. So, any other questions on that particular thing?
All right, anything else? Wait,
Could you comment on some background on the SASD rate increase?
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I sit on that board.
It's all
Yeah, let me just say that everyone that is on that board is suffering the same thing that you're suffering. We go through the financials every meeting. I mean, it's running well within budget. The only difference is the cost of power. It's through the roof, and they are subject to that, just like we're subject to higher gas prices. And so, as far as like an answer, a solution, I mean, that is, there's a lot of discussion as to whether it's better to align with like a Rocky Mountain Power or, but the thing is SESD is part of UAMPS, and so we've already got some collective bargaining ability, which should allow us to keep our power costs down to some extent, but it's just a crazy environment for power purchases, and so that is a real challenge, and there's not an easy answer that I can offer. Even if we were to do our own power company, we would still have to go out and buy power.
Megan, you say there's like a shortage of electricity or having a hard time finding, that's why the price is so expensive for the other solutions.
Yeah, so it's partly the competition, it's partly the fact that they are mothballing coal-fired generators out of concern for climate change, and there are there's really no ability to bring that up. I mean, so solar is an option, but the thing about solar is that it is only producing electricity in the daytime. It's not even producing electricity in the peak hours when there's need. And so, some people, they want to install batteries. I think that would be awesome as a solution. And SESD is definitely looking at allowing for more panels, because there are some restrictions just because of the wear that it causes on the overall infrastructure. And so they have placed some limits, but they are looking at that. I'm on the resource committee for SESD. So they're looking at ways that they can increase, individual households' ability to generate their own electricity. But again, you have to have that spinning shaft to make electricity when most people are using it. And solar, while it's a great, clean, inexhaustible option, it doesn't really provide that. So, yeah. Aaron?
Just a comment on that SESD stuff. So I went to the meeting that SESD held a couple months ago down at their facility. And as I listened to them explain all these reasons, I pulled up Rocky Mountain Power's rate schedule and SESD's rate schedule, because they're both on their websites, and they have a slightly different break point of what they charge at what level. But when I ran my power usage through through Rocky Mountain Powers, I found that I was actually getting cheaper power through SESD than I was through Rocky Mountain Power. Now, this is before the rate increase, admittedly, but I looked back through the previous several rate schedules because they had them on their website, and I looked at that SESD has been competitive either cheaper or just barely more expensive than Rocky Mountain Power. And Rocky Mountain Power has been changing their rates as well. So even though right now ours just jumped significantly, it'll only be a matter of a few months before Rocky Mountain Power's also jumps, and everybody's in the same boat. And we get really good service from SESD. So I felt like, okay, maybe I can't be so upset after all. It's a nationwide global energy thing, not a, we're getting hosed by SESD, would be better off with Rocky Mountain Power.
Thank you. Beautifully said on behalf of SESD. Or, thank you. All right, anybody else? Okay, well, as has been expressed, thank you for being here, for your interest in our community and taking the time to come and participate. We still have to vote on a thing or two, so I
We can
guess,
stay for a few minutes and.
Oh, yeah.
answer questions.
that's true. And I also forgot to mention any math teachers in this group, because it is Pi Day, and so Jody did provide pies back there, so help yourselves to pies. Okay, well, thank you again for being
Remember to
here.
go and see and sign up for the participant.
Yeah, it's right above the pie. Okay, thanks.